Hello, everyone. My name is Kgopotso. I'm excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the workshop on possibilities, playful tools, and the curriculum, lessons from educators in rural schools of South Africa. So I'm super excited to have you join me. So who is this person in front of you? My name is Kgopotso. I am born and bred in Soweto, Johannesburg in South Africa. Now in Billund to give the presentation. So it's been very cold. I'm not used to this cold, but I'm excited to be joining everyone. I work for a non-profit organization called Care for Education. So what do I do there? I assist with the training of educators and district subject advisors, and together with other wonderful team members, we provide monitoring and support of many of the programs that are implemented by Care for Education. So what is Care for Education that I'm referring to? It's a non-profit organization that is based in Johannesburg, South Africa. They do wonderful work. So they work with different stakeholders, from teachers to children, schools, practitioners. Their focus is on ensuring that practitioners, teachers, or different stakeholders understand the value of learning through play, are inspired to use learning through play methodologies using various playful tools or manipulators. Today, I'll be giving you a presentation on one of the programs that we are implementing as Care for Education, which is called the Foundation Phase Initiative. I will be explaining this in the next few slides, but welcome everyone. I did say I'm from South Africa. In your chat box, you can always tell us who you are and from which country you are from. I do hope that you'll enjoy the presentation. At any point, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat, and I hope that your questions will be answered. So thank you so much for joining us. So before I start, I did mention briefly who I am. I also mentioned who I work with, Care for Education, or work for Care for Education. I would like to show you a short video that demonstrates some of the work that we do. And this video will show you just the playful learning that happens in the early childhood space that we deal with practitioners who are trained by us, and also provide some of the teacher and practitioner training, which is very hands-on, but I will explain it as we continue with our presentation. So just in the next 30 seconds, let's just watch a short video just so that you get an idea of the kind of work that we do. Amazing. So this starts to set the scene so that you have an idea of some of the ECD spaces that we work with and some of the work that they're doing. But what can you expect today? I do hope it will be an amazing presentation for everyone. But today, what I'll attempt to do is to first provide the context of South Africa in terms of play. This will be briefly done because we don't have enough time, but if there's parts which are very brief for you that you need me to explain further, remember just to type into your chat, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some of these questions. The next part is which is actually the core of this presentation, is to provide an overview of the Foundation Face initiative. So this is just one of the programs that is being implemented by Care for Education in collaboration with other partners. I will explain this in the next few slides. I'll also hope to provide some classroom examples of what playful learning looks like in some of our rural schools, explore ways in which educators incorporate play to teach the curriculum. But with everything, it will be important for us to also highlight some of the challenges and hopefully draw upon these findings and learnings to come up with some key conclusions. So this for me, before I start, is quite a picture that's close to my heart. So I grew up in Soweto, went to township schools from primary school all the way to high school. And generally in a class, we have 45 learners or more. And I can recall from primary school all the way to high school how I would be sitting in a row. The teacher would write on a chalkboard, and generally I'd have to repeat and memorize stuff. At no point in my schooling did I associate learning with play. It was never a playful experience. It was rewarding in the sense that I probably learned a few things, but it was never ever playful. And generally, one of the reasons could be that we were a lot of learners in the same classroom that the teacher had to deal with, which was a challenge. I know that other children did not experience learning the same way that I did, or schooling the same way that I did, because South African schools are diverse, but the general population has to deal with having 40 plus learners in the classroom where the teacher's dealing with a lot of demands. And this is one of the pictures that was shown in one of our local newspapers, which was overcrowded, and this one teacher had to accommodate and teach all these learners. So it was for me telling or interesting that what I experienced as a child still continued, especially for other learners at least, where they have to deal with large numbers in their classes, and also an experience that teachers need to deal with. So in this context, I'm imagining it's difficult to even imagine that you can have a playful teaching classroom. So in the next picture, the top left picture reminds me also of how I would sit in my own school. And it's interesting that some of our learners are still experiencing that. And in the bottom right corner, it's a picture that was taken in one of, I think it's City Press, one of our newspapers, of a group of learners in Eastern Cape of over 100 children writing their grade 10 exam. So these are 15-year-olds. But again, it's the reality of many children. But I want you to have that context in mind, because it's very important when I explain the power of the Foundation Face initiative, and even how amazing it was to see examples of learning through play happening in these schools. So that is what I'll be presenting on. Have that in mind. But before we start, let's start with the game, shall we? It's a picture game. I'll reveal certain parts of the picture. I'll be using the See, Think, Wonder thinking routine, which is synonymous with Harvard University. But I would like to see or determine how many of you can guess what's in the picture, or maybe think about what could be in the rest of the picture. So let's start. Okay, are you ready? Drum roll, please. And once you start guessing, please type on your comments. It will be interesting to see some of the stuff that you say. I'm seeing that someone is joining from Nigeria. Welcome, welcome. Okay, cool. So I'll proceed. I've revealed one part of the picture. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? Let me see if I can reveal more. What do you see? What do you think? What are you wondering? What do you think could be in the rest of the picture? Okay, let's see. Ha. There's a child. I see a child. Something is happening here, but I'm not sure what. Can you guess what it is? Okay. Let me just reveal the rest. Type in your guesses. I see someone saying the playground floor. What is on the playground floor? I wonder, Nehi. Let's see. Huh. Something else I see. Now, can you guess what I could be revealing in the rest of the picture? Okay. Let's end the suspense. Let me reveal the rest of the picture. Aha. So this is an interesting game. It's an indigenous game. I will not claim that it's only restricted to South Africa, but I know that as a child growing up in Soweto, I play this a lot. We call it diketo in Sesotho, and it's izingeto in Zulu. So the idea of this game is that the circle that you see drawn in white represents a kraal, and the stones that are inside the circle represent the cows. The child needs to throw one stone in the air, take out the stones in the kraal or the cows in the kraal, and then catch the stone, throw the stone again in the air, put back the stones in the circle, leaving one stone at a time. So when I played this game, I was playing, and I grew up in a place with limited resources, but I could still play with my friends. We created our own rules. Sometimes we adapted them. It was very social, but I was not aware that in these moments, in these spaces, even with limited resources, that a lot of learning through play was happening. Because I had to count the stones. I had to problem solve. How far will I throw the stone so that I'm able to remove enough stones from the circle or cows from the circle and return them back. But it was a fun experience, and a lot of other people I know have played these games. It would be interesting to see if this game is familiar with you, or if you've played other games as well. Okay, beautiful. I love this. Okay. So with this in mind, as you think about this game, and as I was mentioning the kind of learnings and skills that I acquired from these, a lot of learning was happening. And this we are all familiar with in terms of learning through play and some of the skills that we acquire. So I know in a lot of the games that I played, be it diketo or skipping or other games that I know that you might relate to, or that might be unique in your context. There was a lot of physical movement, so there's physical development. There was a social-emotional, negotiating with a friend, feeling sad when you lose, feeling joyous and happy when you succeed. So all these were important. I had to adapt at certain points. My strategies to make sure that they were effective. But again, it was a lot of fun and learning happening without me understanding as a child that I was learning. So play is the foundation of learning. And at certain times, it would also build on my self-esteem. But generally with play, it stimulates different parts of the brain, which is important for learning. So again, even with indigenous games, even with games which are created where children have limited resources, there is a lot of learning happening. But what could playful learning look like in schools? And that becomes the basis of the Foundation Face Initiative. So in South African schools, especially the ones that I've seen and the ones that I've attended, there was never a lot of play. So what would happen is that you look at an image from a book, and that's how you learned. There was never playing with ideas and concepts for you to make sense of the abstract. So it was never really concrete. And I'm not saying all schools are like that, but certainly the schools that I went to. So with this in mind, Care for Education, the Department of Basic Education, UNICEF, and the Lego Foundation have collaborated on a national program which aims to empower teachers in play-based methodologies and bring in playful learning tools that many of our learners would otherwise had never had access to using. Specifically, 6 Bricks is one of those tools. So just to explain what the Foundation Face Initiative is, and just with this picture in mind, you see that these are large classrooms, but every child has a set of 6 bricks. And on your top left corner, you see a house with corrugated iron. Some of our children are coming from such homes. So obviously the resources are limited, but despite the limited resources, we can still make their learning experience better. And that's what the Foundation Face Initiative is about. So what is the Foundation Face Initiative? It's a program that was implemented in 3 provinces initially in 2019. So conceptualized around 2017, 2019 implementation happened. So it was done first in Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, recently a bit of Limpopo, and now in 2023, it will be implemented in the 6 remaining provinces because we have 9 provinces here. So the idea of the Foundation Face Initiative is to use a playful teaching tool where every learner has a set to experience learning in the same way, right? Because a lot of the schools that we come from, you might find that if your parent could afford a particular tool, therefore you have it. If your parent couldn't afford, you cannot have it. So here, every child has a set of 6 bricks. It's a playful learning approach to teaching, which is more hands-on and practical. It's very much child-centered, where the child is able to share their emotions, their feelings, their perspective, their ideas. It's embedded in the curriculum, hence the collaboration with the Department of Basic Education. And it's implemented for children between 5 years to 8 years old. Hence, it's called the Foundation Face Initiative. And the idea and the inspiration of this is to hopefully inspire a change in attitude and behavior in terms of teachers and how they teach. Assist them in reimagining learning in a way that is for the children, by the children. So currently with the Foundation Face Initiative, over 1 million children have a set of 6 bricks. That for me is amazing, especially as a young woman who as a child never got to experience playful learning in my own school. And many other teachers, over 27,000 teachers have been trained on embedding play in the curriculum using 6 bricks as one of the manipulative of choice. So for this part of the presentation, I draw my examples on the work that I did with other colleagues and what we're focusing on. We implemented, or the Foundation Face Initiative was implemented since 2019 in different districts or provinces, right? But we had never really gone back to the schools to see, is learning through play still happening? And if it is, what does it look like? What are teachers doing? Are they still doing it? Are they having challenges? So then we thought, rural schools would be an important place to also see because they are very much remote, and generally it's important that we also find out what's happening there. So this part of the presentation is based on rural schools with limited resources. Many of these are still using what we call pit toilets or long drops. So they don't have flushing toilets, and sometimes children need to travel a distance from the classroom to the to use the bathroom. A lot of these schools are overcrowded, and generally teachers are dealing with a demanding curriculum, and that's the reality. But it was important for us to see what learning through play could look like in these schools. So the question that we asked ourselves as a team was, what does play look like in rural schools? But specifically, how can educators support children's learning by embedding play in the curriculum. That was an interesting one. We went to several schools in Eastern Cape and Free State. If you want details about how we went about it, feel free to type in your chat box. If we have time, hopefully I can address that. If not, we can definitely stay in touch so that I explain. So this was the question that drove our support visits to these schools in the remote areas of Eastern Cape and Free State. So I'll be highlighting 4 examples for you. The first one is mathematics. The second one is language. The third one is life skills, and the fourth one is assessment. I need to say this because it's very important. Many of you might already be playful teachers, so you are already embedding play in the planning of your lessons, to the facilitation of your lessons, and possibly the assessment of your lessons. And many of you might look at these examples and think, okay, so what? So they did this, but what does it mean? I already do this, but I would like for you to think about it based on how I explained my growing up in the schools where the teacher was standing in front, writing on the chalkboard or using a textbook. And I never got to experience agency and learning through play and independence and engagement, because a lot of the schools that I'm talking about are these kind of schools. And these are schools that were inspired to change because of the collaboration between the Department of Basic Education, UNICEF, Lego Foundation, and Care for Education in providing workshops that were very playful so that the teachers were able to experience what learning through play felt like, the skills that they developed, how it was embedded in the curriculum, such that they were able to use that in their own lessons. So I want you to have that picture in mind. So these are not by far the most brilliant in terms of more playful than what you are used to, but these were very important for the schools that I'm referring to. So let's look at the first example. Playing with time. So we observed a lesson with colleagues on mathematics. When I learned about the time in the 90s and 2000s as a child, I learned about the time from a book where the clock was drawn and maybe a time was written, and the next time I had to draw the arms of the clock to also determine the time. But I never played with time. And many of the schools never play with time, but here we get to see a teacher who's being innovative and playful. So they've gone through the workshops facilitated by Care for Education, which are very hands-on. And the teacher decided that for her, she could use a playful teaching approach to teach mathematics. She took out a hula hoop to showcase the clock. She used the 6 bricks to showcase the arms of the clock. And it was collaborative. Children went outside, they sat in a circle, and they started learning about the clock. So time, the concept of time, which is often an abstract concept, was made concrete for these learners. A powerful moment for us to observe. Now, what about language? What would a language lesson look like? So when we're observing some of the language lessons, we came upon a few teachers who were innovative with how they would teach language. In the particular week that we went to visit these schools, it was actually, the theme of the week was transportation for the 7-year-olds and the 8-year-olds. But firstly, for this teacher in particular, who was teaching grade 3 learners, if I remember correctly, she asked, so she was very creative. She said to the teachers, imagine you're throwing a party for your friends, for your friend. Your friend is having a birthday party. This is going to be a surprise party. You need to think about how you're planning the birthday party, bake a cake for your friend, make some gifts. You need to create a song for this birthday party. Come to the front and present. So what happened here is that the children got to work in groups, collaborate, and then after they could come to the front and present. Again, this might not look like much of a playful picture, but for for many of our learners who are used to looking down without having direct contact, this developed their presentation skills in addition to all the other skills that they were learning. So again, another beautiful lesson to observe, where children had the agency to present in their own words what they had done and had created. So before I explain this lesson, it's important to say, for our schools, foundation phase is very integrated. So it's not necessarily that you do mathematics this time, life skills this time, languages this time, but generally one lesson would touch on mathematics, life skills, and languages together. Just something to note. This was a lesson on transportation. It integrated some language, some life skills to an extent, because children had to work together, socially interact. But for these learners, they had to create trains. And in creating trains, they had to have domestic animals and wild animals to transport to the circus or to a zoo. And it used a lot of imagination and imagining, because a lot of these learners had never even been to the zoo or a circus. So again, another interesting lesson. But if you read the quote, I hope you can see it. At the bottom, the teacher said, after we reflected, that I wanted to see if after reading me the story they had created, they could act out the story and act it out in their own words. Again, the idea of agency on the part of the learners. This one I really enjoyed observing. So for these learners, the classroom was very small, and the teacher wanted to show a physical movement activity where children could balance on different parts of their body. It's part of the curriculum, learning about my body, but generally it's done in the classroom with a book. But here, seeing the limitation of space, the teacher invited the children outside to go and explore and play and balance the bricks on different parts of the body. So this was a lovely life skills activity that we observed. Now, this one was also very lovely to observe. It was on assessment. Often when we go to the schools, or when we showcase a playful workshop with the teachers, which is embedded in the curriculum and all of that, one of the puzzles is, how do I assess this? But it was interesting to go back to the school and, after speaking to the teacher, realize that they were able to assess playful learning, which is one of the things that we advocate for. So in this lesson particularly, a teacher had previously taught money, we use rands in South Africa, using just the textbook, but children did not understand the concept of money. So what is 5 rand, what is 10 rand, or dollars, or pounds, or euros, depending on your currency. So she decided to use 6 bricks to represent a different amount of money. And in doing that, she asked them to pretend that they were buying in the market. So for example, if I'm going to buy a calculator, which is 70 cents, I might use the orange brick and the red brick, which gets to 70 cents. And then in the following morning, the teacher was able to assess the children. So she said, as you read the quote, the learners had to reimagine that 6 bricks represented a different value of money. The next day, the learners were given worksheets where they were assessed on money. The learners were able to connect the previous concrete lesson with an abstract activity. So again, this was amazing to see. So how did educators integrate play in their teaching practices based on the examples that I've just shown you? They used physical tools, this being 6 bricks for the examples that I've shown you. They invited children to sing and perform. They utilized outside spaces as learning areas. They encouraged children to work in pairs and groups. They encouraged the sharing of ideas. They incorporated play into assessments. And fundamentally, children were able to play to understand the concept. Then a book was used to consolidate what they already knew. And what were the challenges? Some of the teachers, granted, were not always playful. Some of the lessons were still teacher focused. At times, discussions between learners were limited. There was sometimes an absence of sharing amongst colleagues, but we assisted that with advocating for communities of practice. I'm running out of time, but then if you have questions, I can elaborate on that. So those were the challenges that we encountered. But overall, it was lovely to see learning through play in rural schools and seeing how teachers were continuously and continuing to incorporate learning through play as a methodology, 6 bricks as a tool of choice, and just adapting to their constraints and allowing children to have agency in their learning spaces. So what are the conclusions, or what conclusions can we draw from these? If we enable an environment where teachers are comfortable to incorporate playful techniques, we open the possibilities for them to be more creative. And lastly, teachers who use a learning through play approach to achieve their learning goals nurture a child's authentic need to play. Children's authentic need to play, very important. So to end off, I want to show you a short video captured by our video expert Fikile from South Africa. If he's listening, he can see his work of the visits that we did in the rural schools. So let's just see this. Thank you so much.
I think it's a good thing because it's a concrete apparatus. So these children want to feel the things and see it.
So 6 bricks has been very helpful in maths, in English, because in English they build stories using the bricks.
Multiplication is a tough one because sometimes the kids also struggle with the addition. But now with the 6 bricks, they're physically doing it and they're interacting with the blocks and with me as well.
It's also been very helpful for life skills, teaching balance, if they put it on their head, if they put it on their feet.
So we did a repeated addition. I used the different colors and I incorporated the 6 bricks.
Amazing. So I do hope you did enjoy that. Sorry about that. So thank you so much for joining. I know the last part I rushed a bit because I'd run out of time. But if you have questions, if you have comments, feel free to post them on the chat. Other than that, thank you so much for joining. Thank you very, very much. And I hope you enjoyed that.